Hello friends, and happy International Stage Management Day. To celebrate stage managers today, we're going to have a conversation with the incredible Amanda Spooner. Credits include Indecent and Sing Street on Broadway, as well as countless off-Broadway and regional theater credits. She's the professor of stage management at Ithaca College in New York, and is on the Equity National Council as a stage management counselor. But you may know her as the founder of Year of the Stage Manager, a grassroots campaign designed to increase visibility for stage managers and what we do. So what better way to celebrate International Stage Management Day than to talk to the person who turned that day into an entire year of advocating for stage manager visibility. My name is Kent, and this is your half-hour call.
This is your half-hour call, half-hour. This is half-hour until places. Half-hour, please.
If this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Kent, and you are watching Half-Hour Call. Half-Hour Call is dedicated to shining the spotlight on technical theater and making theater training more accessible. So if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you never want to miss another how-to video, interview with industry experts like you're watching right now, or general theater update. Anyway, enough about me. Let's go ahead and dive into that interview.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking all about Year of the Stage Manager. What is Year of the Stage Manager?
So Year of the Stage Manager is a campaign. It's a grassroots, community-driven campaign meant to celebrate stage managers and educate people about what stage managers do and the realities of being a stage manager. And when I say educate people, I mean our collaborators, our relatives, our friends, but also ourselves. And in June of 2020, we became an accountability community as well, as we learn more and more about anti-racism and how to identify and dismantle white supremacy culture. Really, it's, such a surreal and awful and tragic time for the whole world in many different ways. We're definitely in a reckoning and a social audit in the United States that's far past due. And we've been given this gift, this really bizarrely wrapped gift, which I refer to as a great pause. And if we don't use it, what are we doing? We're fools, right? We're fools. And so we've been given this opportunity to really ask ourselves, how did we get to where we are with systemic racism in this country? How did we get to where we are with socioeconomics in this country? How did theater, performing arts get to where it is? And we have a lot of questions that we need to answer and make action from. I'm really proud of it in all of those ways. And I'm excited to see what it does with the next 9 months of its life.
Why was it originally scheduled for 2020 or created for 2020?
So really for me, it was, how do we engage in a partnership with our collaborators in which we find space and time to say, hey, so when you call me at 8:30 a.m. on a Monday and it's our day off, I hear you that it's important to you and that you feel like that conversation is urgent. However, you probably wouldn't do that to members in the acting company. So what is it about stage managers that make you feel like it's okay to do that? And even if you as a stage manager feel okay with that, right? Because I certainly answer emails and phone calls on Mondays. When you feel okay with that, what are you saying to employers about how to treat the next stage manager that they work with? And that was something that I started to realize, culminating in an interesting way in 2019. And I think probably because I was teaching more, I was asking these questions out loud, and Lindsay Jones, who's a sound designer, but not only is he a wonderful sound designer, he also is one of the many who fought to reinstate the sound design Tony. And he saw what I was saying, and he messaged me on the side and said, hey, we have an affinity, sound designers and stage managers. We have a lot in common. And what we have in common is that people don't totally understand what it is we do. And I mean, I would argue that I don't totally know what Meisner is. So there's actor things that I don't totally get. And in fact, Equity in February of 1920 first explicitly recognized stage managers in their language that was kept in their minutes and then in their contracts. And Lindsay said, well, then why don't you just make 2020 Year of the Stage Manager? And I was like, can we do that? And he's like, who's going to tell you no? And I was like, oh, well, that's a good point. Most people were super on board with it, stage managers and the people who love them. And some stage managers were said, why? Like, what we do is not supposed to be visible. Why do we need attention? And automatically assume that it was ego-based. I'm like, no, it actually is, a finite amount of time to make visible the people who do specifically work to not be visible. And because we work to sort of fly under the radar and manage things seamlessly, it has chipped away and undercut the education that people have about what we do and our ability to advocate and negotiate for ourselves. There's nothing wrong with taking a year and saying, hey, we're going to shine the light on stage managers for a year, and then they're going to go back into the wings, and hopefully what's left is a radiant afterglow of remembering them when you're putting out a press release that has every single designer and associate choreographer in it. You might as well add the stage manager too. Why not,
That radiant afterglow, what do you think? Looking to the future, what are your absolute biggest fantasies of what year the stage manager might become in the next few months, and then afterwards the kind of lasting effects?
It goes from everything to like big things, which would be calling Actors Equity Association something else, right? Something else that includes the thousands of stage managers who, some people who are both actors and stage managers, but the thousands of people who identify in any way as a stage manager are just simply excluded from the title of the union. So that's a big one. And in negotiations, making sure that there are ASMs on contracts, making sure that we're not saying, oh, you know what, they don't need an assistant stage manager. I'm like, no, they do actually. And you can make a concession all you want to. They're still going to find someone who's an intern or a production assistant and have them do that work. So that work should be on a contract, especially now in this day and age. So that's some of the bigger things, like, the livelihood things that I think are important, but it's also the small things too. I hear repeatedly that stage managers are always made a little sad when after a show, the cast will go out for drinks and not invite them, or they'll make plans to like have a potluck or play secret snowball or whatever they're doing and not invite them. And so to me, it's also just those simple gestures too, that hopefully the idea of, making visible stage managers permeates so much throughout the community that it shows up in simple things that you can't necessarily trace back to you're the stage manager.
January till now, have there been any favorite moments?
I think one of the most moving things that happened was in February when we were celebrating 100 years since stage managers had been explicitly recognized at Actors Equity Association, that everybody who could was getting together to take photos across the United States, which I thought was really cool. And to be in Times Square with over 120 stage managers to take a photo. And it was just really thrilling because, especially standing in Times Square, you're so used to these giant, beautiful billboards that, of course, have the performers on them. And it's like we were like standing right smack in the middle of just a bunch of stage managers being loud, and tourists, we were saying stage managers, and like tourists were like, yeah. And I'm like, this is it. This is exactly it. This sort of just a moment to be visible. It doesn't have to last forever. We don't have to be centered forever, but just a moment. It felt good. And you could see it in people's faces that they were really proud to be there and that they were really excited.
In honor of Year of the Stage Manager and moving forward out of Year of the Stage Manager, I kind of think it would be fun to try and go through each kind of stage of someone's career and figure out what they can do to advocate for themselves and what they can do to advocate for other stage managers. Are you up for that challenge?
Let's do it. It's like a game show.
But once someone decides that they want to study stage management, how can they be an advocate for our industry and for themselves in that age range and in that step?
I think if they're in high school, it's about going to their educators and saying, hey, this is what I'm really interested in. I think the same for humans of any age, but especially when you're in high school, you have less luxury of life experience, is what I call it. And so you don't really know what you're asking for. But I think being visible and saying to your educators, hey, here's this thing I'm interested in. But the reason that I think that's important for advocacy is because it's saying out loud and identifying what their interests are, and it's giving educators and perhaps people in the professional field the opportunity to share with them. And I also think it's about looking, to their left and to their right. I think teenagers especially are such incredible advocates because of the time that they're living in. So I think that's what high schoolers can do, is be aware of, perhaps inviting people into the process and saying, hey, did you know that there's a whole world off stage that makes the show go, that makes it possible? And also to give, to have a voice to say out loud to people, hey, I need this as a resource, and giving people the opportunity to rise to that occasion.
But I guess the next step would be a college stage management program. So if your students are watching this, what would you say to them that you haven't already said to them?
I mean, I guess I would say to them, and I always feel sort of funny saying this, I'm very proud to be a professor. I love working at Ithaca College. I love that we have a BFA in stage management that's launching in the fall. But the reason that I feel funny is for what I'm about to say, that I feel like education is all around you at all times. Peer-to-peer education is so incredibly valuable that to have a formal opportunity to go to college is a luxury. It's an important luxury, but it is a luxury. It's a luxury a lot of people take for granted. But I wish that we would start to turn the ship that is culture and in the way we think about education, in valuing those peer-to-peer educational moments, and saying, oh, what you're learning about the world doesn't have to come only in the form of a formal education. And the reason I guess that would be a point of advocacy is because simply learning about people's truths and their experiences that are different from your own increases your ability to see the different ways that people are living and the different histories that they have and the different things they're experiencing, and might make you more inclusive in your own work and in the own way that you think about the world. And that's what I would hope for people who, to be specific, are, in that 18 to 22 age range. Because college age could be anyone, except for my 4-year-old.
Yeah.
He cannot do that yet. He's very good at math, but he's not ready for college.
Especially for folks that are not members of Equity, how can they advocate for themselves when there's not necessarily a larger advocacy network that is supporting them? And I think that's going to be the toughest one.
It is one of my favorite ones to talk about. It is so much being brave. It's so much about being brave and talking to the people who are fully immersed in the profession, who are depending on the profession for their livelihood, reaching out to them, learning their truths. Truly, that's why history repeats itself, because there's so little of that we do, because their lived experience is going to help inform your advocacy for yourself. I think it is really, really, really hard to be an intern and say, no, what I'm doing actually is labor, and you should hire someone for this, but you've not done that. Because what we imagine would happen if they did, right? Because we all sort of go to that scarcity place in our minds, I think, is that if I'm an intern and I'm clearly working and not being paid for it, if I say something, I feel like I'm going to get let go, not fired because I've not been hired, but I'm going to get let go. And then somebody else will just come in and do my job. It's the Miranda Priestley effect, right? Like 1 million girls would kill to have your job, or whatever the quote is. It's just not true. I think that, again, there are some producers and employers who are going to be like, get out of here with your blue sweater. I never want to see you again. And then bring somebody else in, sure. But I actually think that if we communicated more and educated people about what an internship is even supposed to be, or what we think it is, and that the key is communication and asking the question and saying, hey, I just want to get some clarity. This is what I think I'm supposed to be doing. This is what you've asked me to do. And this is where I'm just not sure that those things fit together, and giving the employer the opportunity to say, oh, I, didn't realize, let me fix that for you. And what empowers someone to even have that conversation and ask those questions, I think, is looking to the people who are fully immersed in their livelihood, have already done it, and can give some advice. Because the more that you can communicate in an effective way and stand your ground and have your own boundaries, because everybody has their own, and let the sort of more experienced part of the population help you identify what those might be in an appropriate way. I think the more you can do that, the better the relationship is going to be between employers, which is funny because we're talking about interns, but producers and interns and early career stage managers.
Once they're at the point in their career where they're going to consider joining equity or not, things that they could do to advocate for all stage managers and then for themselves.
And especially when it comes to the union, I really think the best way that people can advocate for themselves is to understand why labor unions exist in the first place. In our lifetime, we've always known labor unions to be a thing. We have not watched the birth of labor unions in the way that someone at the turn of the 20th century might have witnessed. And I think we take it for granted, which is why I think everyone should read The Grapes of Wrath, or watching Newsies. I don't know. I've never seen it, but I understand it's also inspiring. But I think it's one of the ways that people can actually sort of do a gut check of what it's like to live in a world without labor unions. And the reason I say that that's one of the greatest things that stage managers in their early career can do for advocacy is once you understand that, you understand the gravity of it. Joining equity is about making a commitment to other people. It's about making a commitment to the collective, and it's about power in numbers. And it's about saying, we're here, we have shared interests. We may not always agree on the finer points, but what's important is that we have unity.
Especially stage managers in a union called Actors Equity Association. How can we advocate for stage managers within that union?
I mean, I think that it's about getting involved. It's about understanding what the governance structure is. Nothing worse. And hey, prime suspect number one, nothing worse than complaining about something that you haven't bothered to learn about. It's about learning how it works and how you can participate and have your truth be heard and have your truth be integrated into the collective whole. And also understanding, this is my favorite thing, Kent, understanding that you don't have to wait for the union for change to happen. You don't. There are agreements that, of course, you must take your 10s and your 5s, right, or your 20s, although I hate 20-minute breaks, but you must abide by those things that are, signed and sealed in agreements and contracts for sure. But working culture above and beyond that is affected by the people who are in it. And that as long as you're not in violation of whatever your contract language is, that you can actually make effective change. And that's really what You're the Stage Manager is all about, right? Is saying, we don't need Actors Equity Association to decide is the year of the stage manager. I mean, I love the union, but we don't need them to do that. And there were some people in the early days of Year of the Stage Manager that were like, who said that it's year of the stage manager? Was Actors Equity Association? And I was like, sure. Like, if you need that and it keeps you warm at night, sure. But there's actual change that can happen outside of what happens at the labor union. And I think the labor union's like, yes, please, please go start making effective change about the culture surrounding 10 out of 12s and 6-day work weeks. Like, you are literally the union. You are literally equity as a person who's a member of the union, but you have some autonomy to go and raise awareness and bring attention to the things that are important to you as a stage manager. So that is my answer to that.
I feel like that's a solid mic drop moment to end that section on. Do you have anything else to say to the stage managers of tomorrow before we wrap this bad boy up?
I just want to say that you matter. Your needs and your wants, you matter. Maybe your job is a job that you hang out in the wings and that you're not visible and your story is not centered in the work that you're doing, but you do matter. Your labor matters, your contribution matters, your mental health matters, your representation matters. It all matters. And if you need to find that somewhere, and if you need to be inspired to believe that to be true about yourself, if you need to be reminded of that, look no further than your fellow stage managers, because that's what I think we're all proving that we are happy to provide. as a community.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for being here. And thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. I hope you enjoyed this video. My name is Kent, and this has been your half-hour call.
Hey there, friends. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, I do not have a Patreon, and I do not plan on making a Patreon. If this fact bums you out, please do me a huge favor and support the channel by liking this video and commenting, and then take the money you would have given me and give it to one of the following organizations instead. The Actors Fund, Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS, or my personal favorite option, go buy a ticket and see some local equity regional theater, because it is the absolute best way to learn. Thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. My name is Kent, and this has been your half-hour call.